Welcome to Culmination, where we're not experts, but we sure have a lot to say. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the entrepreneur, Barb McMahan, to discuss careers and how to pursue one. And with that said, let's get started. So, Barb, how would you define a career exactly?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Casey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you.
And I would describe a career as a profession or occupation that is one that allows somebody to really get a sense of living their purpose and providing fulfilling work, and one that really takes place over the span of an individual's life. So, say to compare that to a job, it's much more short-term, more finite, and usually when you think of a job, it's really more for the purpose of making money, where career has a lot of intrinsic satisfaction associated with it.
So, do you want to get into that more? Like, how would you define that intrinsic satisfaction? Or you said the words purpose and fulfillment. You want to explain that to me?
Absolutely. So when I coach individuals either on how to find a career, or sometimes I'll coach individuals that are in a career or position and they feel stuck. So that's where I work with them. I encourage them to do a lot of reflection. I offer them assessments that really allows them to unlock what are the values that are most important to them in a work environment. What are the strengths or talents that they bring to a position? What really gives them the greatest sense of fulfillment, and to allow them to use it really as a baseline for something that they can pursue.
So that's kind of like the basis behind what people say a dream job is, right?
Exactly. And it works. It really does.
So I guess we can get into it from there now that we've defined that. So I guess the simple question is, how can we go about choosing one to pursue?
Okay, great, sure. So, let's say I'm working with an individual, maybe somebody who's recently out of college and they're not sure where they want to start their career.
The fresh meat.
Exactly, the fresh meat. So what I do when I work with them, first we do start off with a couple of assessments. And ones that I particularly like, I like to use a personality assessment such as the Myers-Briggs type indicator or the DISC. But it's a personality assessment that will allow them to understand what type of role is going to be best suited to their personality.
Or like what type of person they are in general.
Exactly. And there's no hard and fast I'd say alignment between certain positions and certain personalities, so it's not a hard and fast rule. However, there definitely are significant, I'd say, leanings where certain personality types may be better suited for certain types of work. So I like to start there. Another assessment that I love is the Edgar Schein Career Anchors model. And I am a huge advocate of living your values at work. And so the philosophy behind Edgar Schein's model is there's 8 different career anchors, and those really connect to different values. And his philosophy is, think about it, if you had to give up everything but one value, one or two, what would be the one or two anchors that really are most important to you in a career?
And what do you mean by value exactly?
So examples, and this was very helpful for me even when I made the decision to leave a corporate job to pursue owning my own company and moving into consulting. So for me, 2 of my strongest values, one is autonomy, meaning that I like to decide what do I work on, when do I work on it, and really to give myself full autonomy in the kind of work I do.
So like freedom and control.
Freedom and control, you've got it. And then my second is that of work-life balance. So again, for me, a holistic life was what's most important to me. I say was and still is. So if I wanted to work out, in the middle of the day, that I could do so if I needed to take one of my kids to a doctor's appointment, to be able to do that without the guilt associated with it. So that's probably the key of the work-life value. So other values, for some people, it's really that being that subject matter expert, having that technical functional expertise where they are really sought after for their knowledge or skill set. For other people, it's the idea of problem solving, and they love the challenge that's associated with that. For others, it's having a workplace that's stable. So, okay, maybe this isn't exactly where I would love to work, but I know that this position gives me a sense of security.
Security in what way, may I ask? Like financially, or like they give you benefits or something?
Great question. It could be whatever that means to the individual. What it means to me is more financial security, like you say, benefits. It could even be the security of knowing that the organization is in a good shape and that they don't have to worry, will they have a job in a week or two?
They're not going to get audited or something.
Exactly. For others, they're much more, like the risk-taking entrepreneur who likes to unleash their creativity, and that's key. So those are some examples.
Yeah. So, did you have more to say on
I was going to say there's
Sure.
also another great assessment that can be very helpful, especially for somebody who's starting out in the field, and that's the Strong Career Assessment. And so the Strong Assessment identifies 6 different, I'd say, types of jobs or positions. And what it does in this assessment, it identifies the type of individuals that are most happy in those certain roles with the way that the participant completes it. So it's really, again, increasing the odds that if somebody moves into a certain role, that it will be one that's gratifying to you. So that's another one that working with clients, they find that to be very helpful.
And it's just like a test online? Like,
Exactly.
how did these tests work exactly?
Yes,
like a
they
multiple choice?
Yeah, they are all online, multiple choice, and so, but it's amazing. I couldn't even tell you the science behind it, but I can tell you it's really accurate. And for me, it's very gratifying to see people who don't know what they want to do, to be able to, create more focus and to determine what it is that they like.
I will say that in my experience of taking these tests, I'll use Myers-Briggs as an example because that's one I'm more prominently familiar with. I scored as an INFJ, which is like one of the 16 scores you can get. But in taking this test, it was very hard for me in the sense that, the way it works, there's like these bubbles you fill in on a scale of like, it asks you a question of like, on a Saturday night, like, are you more likely to party or not? And it's like strongly agree on the far right and then strongly disagree on the left. And then what I like about the 16 personalities test specifically is that there's like a middle option of I don't know. It doesn't want you to pick that, but I picked that one. But I guess the point that I'm getting at here is I think for someone like me, someone young, even though I have like a plan of what I would want to do, I'm thinking like therapy or clinical psychology, something in that realm. But for somebody who just doesn't know, like these tests are obviously the first step. It's like, what do you like? What kind of person are you? But to kind of challenge you real quick, it's like, how can these people exactly take these tests when it's something so simple. It's something you're supposed to be able to fill out, but you just don't know anything about yourself.
So, well, great question. And I want to also clarify that that is one data point. So there's also many other elements that I use in the career coaching process to help people to really get a sense, is this right or not? But it helps to define a starting point. So another recommendation that is more, I'd say, specific and practical. Let's say somebody narrows down their career search to, let's say, maybe 3, 4, or even 5 different types of roles. I recommend that they look and see through networking. Who might they know? Who might their friends or family know that they could then talk to do an informational interview where they get an understanding as to, first of all, what does that person do every day? What's a typical day like? What's a typical week like? What does
Mm-hmm.
that person enjoy the most out of that role? What do they enjoy the least? And again, whatever other specific questions they want to ask, it could even be, what hours do they work? Do you have to travel a lot? Depending on what's most important to the individual. But that helps give more concrete information too. That, again, it's another factor that can help in the process.
Mm.
And it actually is very helpful. I have seen a number of clients where they do informational interviews, and it definitely helps them either confirm where they thought they were headed or maybe think, I need to rethink this. Another factor, especially for those that are starting out in a field, is to think about what's the educational requirements. Do I need to get a master's degree? Do I need to even get more education than that? How much will it cost? Do I love school? And I would love to continue to learn. So those are additional factors.
Right. And you've found just from your own experience that after doing these things like networking, taking tests, just kind of looking within, does this often work?
It
You think it's
does.
foolproof?
Well, I can't say foolproof, but I can tell you that for the clients that I work with, they have been able to find very satisfying roles. So another thing that I like to do, I am all about visualization. And so I like for people to think about, like you were saying with a dream job, think about, it is 2 years from now and it is a Tuesday morning, you are waking up. Where do you see yourself? What are you doing? Are you going into an office? Are you working from home? Is it casual? Is it much more formal? Are you working independently by yourself? Are you working with a team? And so
Are you in a box
are
down
you
by
in
the
a,
street?
yes, exactly. So with all of that, it really can help to, again, create that picture in that individual's mind of where they'd want to be. Yeah.
Mm. So I guess I'll ask this next.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking through my questions list. Once we have an idea, and I guess before I ask this, do you want to
Mm-hmm.
define role exactly? Like you've
Oh,
been
when I
saying
say a
that.
role, a position, so somebody's specific, like an occupation at work. So
Okay.
an example could be, a data analyst or an architect or, yeah,
IT or
IT,
something.
exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, once they have an idea of this role or position, one that fits their personality or that they might correspond with,
Mm-hmm.
how do we take initiative? Because I feel like that's a hard step of its own because it's like it's one thing to say, "Oh, I want to be a firefighter," or "I want to be, biochemical engineer," and then
Yes.
there's all these prerequisites and requirements, and it's like, oh, maybe that's hard to get into,
Great, great question. So that's also where my background and experience comes into play, and I coach the individual in creating a plan of action. So first of all, starting out and defining their goal. In some cases, it could be a shorter term goal, looking out maybe a year out or so, year or two, and then longer term. And with longer term, I'd say no more than 5 years, simply because so much can change. And then within that, I am all about specific goals. You may be familiar with SMART goals, but where they're, specific, measurable, um, attainable, realistic, and time bound.
Hmm.
So encouraging the coachee, the person I'm working with, for them to come up with what actions need to be taken in order to make this happen. I'm also all about taking small steps, Casey. So just as you're describing, it can be overwhelming for individuals to think about, how do I get from where I'm at to where I want to be? This is also something that I work with often with individuals that are already in an organization where they might feel stuck with their job. And there are certainly ways to move to either different profession or a different role within your let's say your function, like you said, IT.
Mm-hmm.
So creating those goals, first of all, and then understanding where am I today and what steps need to be taken in order to get from where I'm at to where I want to be. So, to the points we were discussing earlier, do I need some additional education? Do I need certain experiences that I don't have now?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I have the experiences and I just need to figure out how I can find the kind of job that I want and, go out there, meet people or interview. And it's putting yourself out there. And like you said, that even that process isn't always easy for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it, having a career coach can help to provide that the accountability for the individual. So they know, we're meeting in a week. Have I done what I told Barb I would do? And
Like a accountability component.
Exactly. So, like I said, if I was working with somebody who is moving into a field, we would work together, and the coachee would take the lead in putting together what steps do they need to take in order to see, where they need to go. So maybe it's researching what education is required for that, and even what's the cost of the education associated. Maybe it is that they are going to go out and identify people that are in that career that they could then talk to, meet with. It can also be even, again, more self-reflection on their behalf to think about, what do I find to be most enjoyable in my life? What do I think I feel most proud of? And even if it's from, college, there still are transferable skills that you can take over into the workplace. Like maybe it's that I love to, organize a project, or I love to lead a team in the classroom. And again, those are definitely aspects that could be very relevant for certain jobs.
Mm-hmm. And those jobs, or those roles in particular, are kind of interesting because it's almost like there's two categories of jobs. It's like one is like, think about it, teacher, or like a definite, it has a name type jobs. Like, like I said, teacher, or help me out here.
Sure. Like you say, IT specialist, or a physical therapist, right? That there's like a certain role associated.
Exactly. And then the other group is like the more subtle, somebody who manages people, or like there's different skill sets that they have there, or maybe they're like, they don't like talking at all, but they're very efficient at getting work done, or they're super organized or something. It's like, I guess when you take those subtle skills into account, that's probably where people have the most trouble, because for some people it comes naturally. I want to be a doctor because I want to help people. But when people know, like, I'm very quick at getting work done, or I'm very like schedule based, but I have no idea what I actually want to do. What is your approach on that?
Yeah, so that's great. I'm working with a client right now. It's a female executive, and she's in a certain position that she's looking to make a change. And so through our conversations, this is also where it can be very helpful to have somebody objective that you're working with, because from what she was describing, I could easily hear that she loved strategy. So she loved to work in an organization and create a strategy. The implementation side, the actually doing of the work to get it done, that wasn't as exciting for her, or as enticing. So with that in mind, she started to look at roles that would be a major factor. This is also where, Casey, I'm a huge advocate of strength finders. Are you familiar with those?
No.
It's fantastic. It's by Tom Rath, is the book called Strength Finder 2.0, and it's through Gallup. And strength finders, they describe certain, I'd say, strengths. Okay, so they would describe certain, let's say, talents that, or skills that you bring to the workplace. And by taking, this is another assessment, by taking it, you then get a personalized report that shows your top 5 strengths. And what's interesting, the last statistic I saw was that only about 30% of those in the workforce use their strengths every day. So this to me is also so important to find out what are your strengths and how can you use them in the workplace. So for me, one of my strengths is communication. It's also another strength is what's called maximizer, which is taking something that's already good and making it that much better.
Making the most of what you have.
Exactly. So you can think of how both of those fit with coaching so well. And for others, maybe it's, to be more analytical, or an achiever is another type of strength. So that's an individual that, again, they need to be in a role where they get that sense of accomplishment.
And wait, mind if I ask this real quick, just before I forget it, frankly? So that was an interesting statistic you told me of, like 30% don't really use, or like 30% do use it.
And it used to be even less.
Yeah, so my question to you is, do you think because of that statistic, like what is that? Leave like 70% of people don't use their strengths? Is that why there's so many midlife crises? Is that why people hate their jobs? Like you hear these, like we all know the tale of, like, you get the 9-to-5 office job and you hate your life and everything. I mean, they made the show The Office to, like, as a satire of these real life experiences. It's just like,
yes.
Who cares about Scranton, Pennsylvania? They make paper. It's like, there's no meaning in my life. I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily true. It's like, if you work in an office, that's not, like, your life doesn't suck off the bat. It's just how you interpret it. But going back to the statistic, do you think people just feel like they're kind of wasting their life in a sense if they're not using their strengths?
I absolutely do. I mean, I think a lot of people feel stuck, and they may feel like they don't have any choices, or like, even from a, stability or financial place, like, oh, how can I switch careers or fields at this point in my life? But you absolutely can.
They definitely feel stuck.
Yeah.
Like,
and
how can I even make the first move? Like, they probably don't even know that, like, a profession like yours even exists. Like,
exactly.
There's somebody who can help me with this.
Exactly.
And even when they know, it's like, can I even go through with this? Do I want to? Because it's like the same dilemma of, it's like, you're sad, you have, like, clinical depression as an example, or bipolar disorder or something, and you probably need a therapist, but it's like actively seeking one. It's like, well, then I know I have a problem, and I don't want to admit that because I'm afraid to. Yeah. So it's kind of the same.
Exactly. Inertia, or lethargy, whatever you want to call it. And it's hard to make change. That's the other thing. People often resist change in general. It does take more effort.
Well, it's scary,
It's scary, exactly.
What if it doesn't work?
Exactly.
Or what if I have to do extra things that I don't want to do?
That's right. And then also another type of coaching related to careers that I do also is to help people move up in an organization or move to a different role. So it's not all people that are stuck.
Yeah.
But it's, let's say I want to be promoted. What do I need to do in order to get that next role? Or if it's, I want to take on a different role in the organization, and I'm not even sure what would be the next best role for me. So to work with them for that too. So with that process, it's really about, if they're in an organization already, it's about starting with the organization's strategy or mission, and identifying what's the organization about, what do they want to achieve, where am I at, and just like we've been talking, what are my values, what are my skills, what accomplishments am I most proud of, what are those aspects of work that I hate to do every day. So like for me, I don't love administrative work, and we all know that every role, every job, there's going to be aspects that we don't like.
It is a job.
It is a job, or it is a profession. However, this is where, back to using your strengths. So look for something where you use it 10 to 15% versus that being the primary focus of the role. And then, like I was saying earlier, if within an organization you see where the company is going, from that, you can hopefully identify positions that would be ones that you aspire to, and then determine, okay, where am I today? Where do I want to be? And then what do I need to do in order to get, to be qualified for different roles?
Right. Yeah. And I guess we talked about the taking initiative, which is kind of the first step. But I guess once we already like get our foot in the door, our feet in the water, like how do we stick with this plan exactly?
That's also where it can be very helpful to have a coach work with you. That's also part of that accountability process, that I'm there and I'm not there to tell answers, but to work with the individual to be the catalyst to help them see what they need to do to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Another aspect of career coaching, too, could even be I've worked with clients to help them get the salary that they deserve. I once, a few years ago, worked with a woman, an executive, and she was sharing that she felt she really deserved more for her contribution in the workplace. So together, I worked with her to put together basically a business case describing her accomplishments, how she was able to add value to the company. I'm happy to say she got an 18% increase. So it's
Was
not.
she just like assertive about it?
Yes, yes, she was. And the other factor was she had the data. That's also where working with a coach to see what do I need to present in order to best make my case. So
what kind of data?
Oh, in terms of her business contributions. And so she was able to show.
Like, this is why I
Exactly,
deserve it.
right.
Okay.
So that can be a role of a coach to help work with the individual to make that case.
So I think we covered, I obviously have more of like a devil's advocate question, but is there, what do you want to get into? I'll turn the table a bit. What do you want to get as a point across?
I'd say, well, yeah, just in terms of other types of coaching that I do, I also really love to work with people when they're in some kind of I'd say a transition mode. So maybe it's related to career, maybe it's even just related to, how do I get more satisfaction in my life? And maybe not related specifically to the career. Maybe it's how do I achieve more work-life balance?
Like with a career and everything.
Exactly. So, and even another really common topic is how can I work more effectively with others? So conflict often exists. So that can be something that we also deal with a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how would you go about dealing with that?
Oh, with conflict then, I mean, again, every situation's different. But what I normally do is I start off and I understand where's the person, where are they experiencing conflict, to get their perspective. And again, to understand from them, what would it look like if they were able to achieve the outcome that they'd want? So what would it look like if they and maybe their boss were able to work better together? And then to serve as a catalyst to understand what changes do they need to make. So it's really all about them. They're not going to be able to control somebody else's behavior,
right?
But what can they do in order to help the situation? So maybe it's helping somebody understand, I need to keep an open mind. When I see Sam in the hallway, or if I know I've got a meeting set with Sam, boy, it triggers me and I go in there. And so to work through those kinds of topics and to guide the individual in coming up with the answer for what will work best for them.
So it's all about like individual responsibility and just, I guess, that autonomy, like you said at the beginning.
Yeah, it is. Yes, exactly. And so often I know people ask, what's the difference between a coach and a mentor? So for a mentor, that's somebody that really will be there to give you the specific information and the answers, or be there to guide you.
The itinerary and everything.
Exactly. Whereas a coach, it's much more, through questioning, getting the individual to come up with their own answer. Yeah.
There's definitely a distinction there I can see.
Yeah.
So I guess moving forward here, I want to ask you, how did you find your career? And even though this is kind of meta in a sense, because you're a career counselor and you do other things, but like in terms of the topic of careers, like how did you end up here? I guess tell your
Yeah,
story if
yeah,
you.
that's a great question, Casey. And so even starting back, I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Michigan in psychology, and then a master's degree from Michigan State. And, I started my career primarily in human resources, would do some organization development work there as well. And as I got further along in my career, I remember at one point in particular, I had the dream of doing international organization development work. And so what is
Hmm.
organization development work? In this case,
Yeah,
it
I was
was,
gonna ask.
yeah, it was working with like team development or providing training or coaching, that kind of work. And I was working for a company and I was in a job, and it was again a very solid role, and but it did not utilize my strengths.
And
It
what
did.
were your strengths?
Oh, what were my strengths are communication, maximizer, arranger, which arranger is like planning. So yeah, again, that comes very naturally to me.
Hmm.
Empathy and futuristic.
Hmm.
So with futuristic, that's I think also why I love facilitating strategic planning meetings or other sessions where we look out into the future. Even as you've heard me describe, where do you want to be in the future?
Right.
So again, the realization that again that was not happening in the role that I was in, and I was able to get the opportunity to do international OD work for this company. And I asked my boss at the time if I could do it, part time. And totally understandably, no, I was not able to take like part time of my role
Hmm.
to be able to do that. And it was just so clear to me. So I'm also all about listening to your intuition. It was so clear to me that this is my time to try it. And so I took the plunge, and I love the expression you can't cross a chasm without a single leap. The idea
Hmm.
being, it's not going to take you a little steps. You have to take that risk. So I decided to take the risk and never look back. It was great. It was wonderful work. Um, Eventually, you may not remember, but around 2008 or 2009, with the economy,
The housing crisis.
yeah, yeah. So it was companies, the work that I do, they weren't necessarily canceling it, but they were postponing it. And just again, realistically, I needed to go back to corporate for,
Hmm.
again, for some of that security. And so I
Yeah.
did that for a number of years. And then again, was in a position where I was able to go back to the work that I love. And
So it
hopefully this
was.
will take me through. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off there, but it was circumstance that kind of threw
E-
you off there.
Exactly. And so that's also realistic, for people. You can't ignore that. It's the reality of life.
Hmm.
However, I am also a firm believer that the more we create and have clarity about what is that dream job,
Hmm.
that you can achieve it, or at least bring more aspects of that into your existing role.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, actually, I don't know where I was going to
Oh,
go with
well, I
that.
was going to say though, so here's some ways to think about, do I need to make a change? So think about that Sunday evening feeling. Are you dreading that Monday morning going into work? Or
Mm.
is it something that, hey, I'm looking forward to it? Or, during the workday, do you wake up and feel, excited and happy? Or again, is it that sense of dread?
The
I,
9 to 5.
the 9 to 5. And frankly, it's sad but true that I've worked with clients that would say that they would cry a lot during, the work week just because they were so unhappy. And to the point that you raised earlier, people don't necessarily even being that unhappy they get used to it. And so it can be hard to make a
It's a
change.
feedback loop. But
Exactly.
how did they get stuck there in the first place, do you think?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's very different for every person. But along with that, I'd say an overall statement would be that people just kind of go with what's given to them or handed them versus,
Not a second thought.
yeah, and not standing up for what they want, not asking for what they want, not being clear on what they want.
Hmm. I mean, obviously we can look at that like why would you ever do that? But maybe that's just a sign of more like, I don't know,
Yeah,
proactive thinking.
yeah.
But I don't know why.
Have you ever heard the expression about the boiling frog or the frog in boiling water?
No.
Where if you have boiling water and you put a frog in it, it will jump right out. But
Hmm.
if you put a frog in water and it's like, normal temperature, and then you slowly heat up the water until it is boiling, the
He won't
frog,
notice.
yeah. And so I think that's the analogy there. People just, it starts to continue on, and people may just get more set in their ways.
Hmm. But why do you think they just take what's given to them? Do they not know better? Or is there somebody like pushing them a certain way? Is there like a culture that's there
I,
put in place?
I'd have to say for all of the people that I work with, it's never one specific thing. It really isn't. So,
What are some examples you know about?
for when people aren't so happy,
Or like individual accounts, because
uh,
obviously that's something
oh,
we know for certain.
yeah, I would say what I've seen is often, uh, again, with the reality of work, sometimes there's continued demands and responsibilities that are put on somebody. And so, again, it starts out fine, but then it's more and more until really the individual feels like, hey, I'm drowning here, or I'm not happy with what I'm doing now is different than what I was doing initially. And again, every situation's different. And if it's temporary, that's one thing. If it's, a permanent situation with no end in sight, that's another
Hmm.
situation.
Yeah, and I guess I could see that for myself where it's like, I mean, I work at a pizza place, so I guess I could use this metaphor. This isn't exactly my own account, but let's say, you're on the pizza station, the pizza assembly line, and you just, like, the manager puts you on there and you work there every week, and you just absolutely hate it. You would rather be like a server or something. Like, even though they put you there, think of it this way, it's like they needed somebody there and you were available and you never complained about it to them, so how did they know that you hate it? Like, you're so
Right.
compliant to it. And I know it's hard to speak up to your authorities sometimes, especially if they seem more like at least to your perception, dictators of
Yeah.
like they're gonna get really mad if you say something. But if you genuinely hate it, it's like, why? Like, you don't, a confrontation doesn't have to be like as scary as the word might sound connotatively. Like,
Yeah. And to add on to that, too, I also work with a lot of people. It's not necessarily that they don't like what they're doing, but they want something even better. So I love that. Like, it doesn't have to mean like, oh, I'm so unhappy, but
mm-hmm.
it's, I just know I want to work, and contribute more or get more responsibility. So I have a lot of clients like that too.
Almost like you're a school teacher, and it's like maybe your dream is to help, like, sure, I'm making a difference to these kids in my hometown, but what about like helping kids in Africa, for an example, who, like, they have no technology, they don't know how to read and write, they they need some, in a sense,
Yeah.
more help in terms of their priorities and definitions. And by
Ex-
there I mean like you.
Exactly, that's right. Or somebody, let's go back and say, somebody who is in maybe, logistics or supply chain, just, a business aspect, and
Hmm.
they're working for a certain part of the organization, and they want to expand their scope. So they want to have even more responsibility, or learn more, or have a bigger budget. So it's that continuing to grow their skills. So again, it doesn't have to be necessarily that they're unhappy, but they want even more. And so I love
Right.
working with those kinds of clients too.
Yeah, it's definitely I don't know, it's interesting because I don't know if you know this, but before this show of Culmination, where it's like a self-improvement show and everything, this isn't exactly my first rodeo. I mean, it's my first podcast, but last year, well, I guess last year would be my senior year because I graduated. But in my
Yeah.
junior year, I made a club, like a school club. It wasn't that widely known because I think my biggest problem is advertising. I just don't do it. So it was mainly an experiment among my friends, but I guess the nice thing is that I have like a very diverse pool of friends. So there were definitely, I wouldn't say it was like a convenient sample of one that's not exactly representative. I feel like we have enough diversity here. So what I noticed with that, and I guess before I say that, what the club was I called it the Power of Purpose Club.
Oh, nice
And
title.
thank
Yeah.
you. So basically, we would meet in a room once a week, and I had two groups. So there was one group on Monday, the Monday group, and then a Wednesday group. And every class session, I basically had like a Google spreadsheet of basically everybody would think of two things that they're going to do weekly to work on, like some sort of skill. I advertised this club as like, hey, ever wanted to learn guitar but couldn't take the initiative to learn guitar? Well, we'll do this now. We'll have essentially a support group of every week that we meet, we talk about what we did, and the spreadsheet's used to like say, did you do it or not? And then if you did it, you get quote unquote points. And
Yes.
I, I rewarded them with like stickers or something. That some of them are mad at me because I never gave them stickers because COVID happened and we had to switch online, and but whatever, that's getting ahead of things. But basically it incentivized like when setting the goals, it's like, okay, what do you like doing? I like drawing. So it's like, okay, so what's your plan of action? And it's like, okay, my plan of action is I'm gonna draw. I'm just gonna draw twice a week or something like that. And then adding to that, that's like the bottom line. But at the end of each month, I had a quote unquote monthly objective where it's like, okay, so you're doing things, your weekly things, but what are you going to accomplish by the end of the month? So it's like if your goal is reading, you're going to finish the book by the end. If you're into art or something, you're going to bring in your painting or a picture. And then we would have, at the end of the month, we would have a show and tell. And, we would show a picture of what we did so we could talk about it and kind of like feel glorified in our own accomplishments. So it's like a reward for all your hard work. And anyway, back to what we were talking about. I had to just explain what this club
Yeah.
was because
Yeah.
it's an original idea, I guess, at least for a junior in high school. But what I noticed was there was no failure to it. But I guess what I did see at the end was the people who did nothing. And when I mean like nothing, I mean like they don't really do anything. Like they just kind
Really?
of
Like they did nothing?
like they don't
Like,
really do anything. Like no clubs or anything. Like no offense to them, but like it's people like that, they don't really know where to start. So I don't blame them. But they don't really do much, but so at worst this club got them to do something.
oh,
So
great.
like they went on walks and stuff just because you don't want to show up on Monday or Wednesday saying like I did nothing. But they got some, like their goals too were not really the most intense, but it was like reading and walking. And it doesn't have to be like I'm gonna learn a new skill. It's like
Yeah.
just do that. And I noticed that at best the people who already were pretty productive, they got even better with it. Well, they took the club more seriously, but one of my friends, Rohan, who did it, he was actually my guest in the first episode of this show. His goal was to sleep more, and I noticed like he completely fixed his sleep schedule and like he
It's
tracked it and everything.
it,
My friend James, who did the second episode on introversion, he he's an artist and everything, and he like made entire like watercolor murals or something. I actually don't remember what it was, but something that.
Casey, this is a part of what I do in coaching. So I have a coaching client right now. Some of her goals to walk more, to drink more water. I mean, they don't have to be right that I'm going to, paint the next, masterpiece. The baby steps carry a lot of weight, and it's making changes to those small habits. It definitely, first of all, it makes you feel better,
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel that sense of accomplishment, and that's motivating. So
Right.
that's definitely very powerful. And I love the fact, and I've done group coaching, so it's almost like that in a way, because it's, again, you're going to be reporting back to
Mm-hmm.
this, team of peers, and right, that people don't like to say, oh, I did nothing. So that's a great way to also get people motivated. And the more people take action, the easier it is to then, right, take more.
Right. It's almost
Yeah.
like good stress and good pressure.
Yeah.
And also to elaborate on like the baby steps that you said, I'll say like another little anecdote on my mind because this is more recent. I'm taking summer classes right now, and it's like it's pretty intensive because it's college.
Hmm.
It's like 3 credit hours. So what like a semester is 15 weeks, but this is crunched down to like 4 or 5. So uh, it's a lot, but in preparation to this, I decided to like wake up earlier. So I've been trying to do. Um, I wake up at 9, although today I admittedly woke up at like 10:30 just because. Well, I got my second vaccine, so I was
Oh,
I was kind of messed up. So I was like,
yeah,
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 I'm gonna
exactly.
sleep
That'll
a
do
little
it.
bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I've been waking up at 9, and just to mention this because I feel like it's important to stress up until this point, I was like staying up till like 2 or 1, like playing games with friends, hanging out with people. Like I mean, I value that stuff. I had fun. It's been a great summer thus far, but as a consequence, I'd wake up at 12 and my day would feel all topsy turvy because your morning is the midday, and the midday kind of sucks, frankly. But
Yeah, yeah.
but I realized one thing that I know about myself is I love the morning, but the reason why I stay up late is because I hate going to bed. Like I
Mm.
like night, but have you noticed how it's like in terms of your circadian rhythm, it's like the morning feels long, but in a accomplished sense. It's nice, it's calm, so it feels long. The midday feels kind of if you're doing something, it goes by fast. If you're not doing something, it's painfully slow. And then after 5 o'clock, like it speeds up a bit up till 8, and then 8 and onward, the hours just fly by. So the night feels less fulfilling. Like even though I love the nighttime because there's a different vibe, it's more like cozy at your house.
Yeah, yeah.
It just I don't know. There's something about the morning, waking up at 9, and it's like, well, the day hasn't started. I have time to get started, and I get done with my work. And even though it is work, and it's like, I don't know about you guys listening, but does intro to interdisciplinary writing sound fun to you? I mean,
Yay.
I mean it. Some aspects are interesting, like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
studying Dante
Oh, that is interesting.
and
Yeah.
everything like that. But I don't know. When I
Yeah.
do work in the morning, I find it to be my brain is like energized for the rest of the day than if I did it later. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's
So what do you
also,
have
yeah,
to
a
say?
couple of things. One is for most people, I do think the morning time is when our brains are the most fresh. Everyone may be different though. So one recommendation I would say, no matter what your best time is, leverage that. So for some people it's going to be morning. Other people may work great at night.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever that works. But there's also, I love to read a great book by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog. And so a great
Interesting
title. Yeah.
title.
So his philosophy is if you eat a frog first thing in the morning, which is maybe it's that interdisciplinary writing, is that what the name of it?
Yeah.
That the frog, that will be the worst part of the day. So you've got that under your belt, and then the rest of the day,
Mm-hmm.
it like really is a way of, I think, avoiding procrastination. But there's a
Right.
lot to be said for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you accomplish something early on, it does make you feel good, makes you feel confident, and it's easier to have the energy to then take on the rest of that day.
Well, it's also all about how you interpret it. Like sometimes it is hard to sit down and say, all right, I have 3 hours of work every day. roughly, of course. But you have to change your mindset. You have to completely change it. You
Well,
have to think
how
of the
so?
value
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, I'm going to get into that. It's
Okay.
like, why am I doing this? Yes, credit to make my future easier on me so I don't have to take this later. That's like the bottom line. That's like the extrinsic motivation behind a job in general. I need money so I can
Right.
put bread on the table. I don't feel, to me personally, I don't feel like that value is enough for me. I just don't think it's enough. Maybe it is for some people. Like, some people go into business for like big money and they might not care about it, but big money is enough. I don't think it is for me, but I try to think of it like, and it's hard sometimes because, like I was having a blast this summer and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, 6 hours a day doing all this writing
Yeah.
and stuff. But on the bright side, I'm writing, I'm thinking, that makes my brain more energized. I'm learning how to write. I'm getting into the groove in college after basically a year of vacation because,
Yeah.
like COVID and everything made the year easier.
Oh,
And I was
yeah.
online and had so much free time. I mean, I did things like this podcast and a baseball team, but it's different than school.
Mm-hmm.
Your own projects are different. So I just felt like this is something I needed. This is something to help with later on, and I value good discussion and writing, and I'm taking a research class as well, so that's why there's even more work. But I don't know, it's like brainstorm ideas that you'd research, and I don't know, I thought it was cool, and the more you think of it like that, like constructively, why am I doing this, you can turn something you otherwise would have hated into something you like.
Profound. I am serious, Casey. That's absolutely correct. And it's also about, like what you said earlier, a difference between a job and a dream job or a dream career. It is
Right.
that intrinsic, like you said, it's that intrinsic satisfaction. That was well put. That's that's the difference. So it's not like, oh yeah, I get this great paycheck, but I feel great at the end of the day with what I did, or the end of the week, and you see the again the outcome of that. That's also a huge differentiator. That's when I feel most gratified working with somebody
Right.
to get them to that place, for sure.
And the sooner you think of it, it makes everything easier too.
Yeah, and then the other point you said, which also applies, is like delayed gratification, or knowing, keeping that like long term approach in mind, that okay, maybe this, whether you're at work, whether you're in school and college, okay, maybe it's not the most fun right now with what I'm doing, but it then gives me more choices later on.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, that's a great perspective. And I'm also in full agreement with what you said about your mindset being so important.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know I learned recently that optimistic women live 15% more than their pessimistic counterparts, and for men, it's 11% more. Makes you want to change your mindset, huh?
Well, yeah, I mean that makes sense because I heard that when you're depressed, not only are you sad, but it literally dismantles your brain chemistry. Like your
Yeah.
your brain literally physically kills itself. Uh, which is, I know that took kind of a dark
Yeah,
turn,
but we do have the power
yeah.
to change the way we think and to change our attitude, for sure.
I mean the placebo effect exists for a reason. It's like,
Yeah.
like there was that whole experiment where at a bar, it's like half the kids were given alcohol and then the other half were given like a drink with like food coloring that makes it look like alcohol. And they noticed that the ones that drank, yeah, the one that wasn't actually alcoholic, they were the most drunk just because they thought like it or something.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, in a sense too, the placebo effect works where if you expect something, if you expect the COVID vaccine to work, then you're going to, I don't know, you feel more secure about it. And if you doubt the vaccine, then I don't know, maybe like if you're seriously afraid that you'll get sick of like sick from it, then you might actually become sick. Like,
Oh,
your
right.
body
Oh
can
my gosh, it's so
trick
interesting
itself.
that you're saying this, because I'm very interested in learning more about that, the mind body connection. It is real.
It
It
is
is.
real. Yeah. Like, I don't know, I took my friend climbing the other day and he was like, last minute, like, oh yeah, I don't know if this means anything, but I'm afraid of heights. And what I
Oh,
do is
yeah.
bouldering, which means it's not like you're climbing all the way up like 50 feet with a rope. No, no rope, no harness, but it's like it's not that far, and you have a crash pad to fall onto. But if I'm afraid of heights too, but I like it because it's kind of like you conquer your fear.
Right.
Like, I mean, when you're on that climbing wall and you're on a 45-degree incline, or like worse, like even a steeper thing, 30 degrees or something, like you are upside down. Like, the last thing you want to think about is, I'm going to die now.
Right.
Like, so I tell myself, I'm not going to fall. I'm going to do this, focus on the problem. And if I fall, then I fall. Like, yes, I'm afraid of heights, but it trains you to do that. Kind of in the same sense where if you're freezing but don't have a jacket, just say, I'm not cold anymore. Or
Right.
you wake up and you're exhausted because it's 6 a.m. I'm not tired. I'm not tired,
Right.
guys. I'm living.
Right. You are absolutely right. Our brains control so much our thoughts. It's fascinating. It really
Well, it's
is.
not lying either.
No,
Because I'm like, you
it's
know,
convincing yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know that I said it's like it's 6 in the morning and I went to bed at midnight, but I'm not tired. And it's like, no, you're lying because you're exhausted. No, because I'm not tired.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
is exactly why I'm not lying,
Yeah,
because I've made up my mind that at
right.
this moment that I am not tired. Um. So yeah,
Oh,
where
yeah.
were
So,
we?
Casey, I was even, as we were talking before about careers, what are your thoughts about what you're looking to do?
So I think it was around sophomore year where I kind of discovered the idea of psychology, just because I've always looked within myself, like, who am I? That was always the question that I wanted to answer, like, who am I, and why am I, and what am I, how am I, like the W questions plus how. Uh, and another thing I always like to do was talk to people. Like, a lot of my dynamics with people, I have many different friends, like, diverse in thought and culture, ethnicity, everything. But most of my connections are one on one. They're not groups, basically. Like, some people have
Mm,
like their main clique, and then they just stick around there. But I'm more of a social butterfly in that sense. But because I have these one on one connections, I find it more meaningful, or I like to have more meaningful conversations. I always liked helping people, like, with their problems. Sometimes I've had a few instances where it did feel like a burden, unfortunately, but I think that's just from consistency and when you're not all there, I guess. Like, you just can't handle it yourself. But overall, for the most part, I liked helping people. I liked listening to people's problems. Like, I don't know, it's like a puzzle to me. And unlike a puzzle, like a math problem or something, or like, real world
mhm.
physiological applications, like, I never really cared about that. I think they're neat, but I like how complex and almost theoretical, like, you could go the Jung route of psychology where it's all like theory, and he mentions like weird stuff like archetypes in the anima, and it's like, what even is this? Or you could go more of like, I don't know, like the different fields of psychology, like biological, of like, okay, this is why you think this way because there's literal chemicals going through your brain. Um, so I don't know. I just kind of I liked this. I realized that therapy is literally just a conversation, something that I do already. So it's like, why
Oh,
not get paid for
yeah.
it, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why not do this show but get paid for it in an office? And
For
I don't know.
sure, for sure. And that's another point that you're bringing to mind is that just because somebody starts out in a certain career doesn't mean that they can't, then evolve into
Mhm.
something else.
I
So,
mean, I could be a
yeah,
welder someday. I don't
you could, you
know.
could, yeah.
My plan, what did I say, like plan G or something, so it's like
Uh-huh.
you already go down
Right.
the letters. It's like, this is pretty like off the wall, like if life is literally a road and you're just driving, plan G is more like you just like skirt off the road and you're going off road into the forest or something. That's when I'm gonna go into trade school.
Awesome, awesome,
So
great.
uh, yeah, that. But anyway, I don't know. I thought about psychology because this is an actual career that I could do. I think, kind of breaking it down, it's like The what is helping people. The why is because I want to help people, and I like learning about myself and everything. The how is actually going through the process of school and everything. And maybe that's why I found value in interdisciplinary writing. I mean, still, it can be annoying sometimes. I don't want to make it sound like it's all sunshine and rainbows. There is real struggle in the world. But, it's like if you reinforce this idea that this is for something, I don't know, maybe it's worthwhile to you. Like, why is there an entire concept of I would take a bullet for my partner or something? Like,
Right.
You don't want to get shot. Like, why would you ever do that? But it's this, like, is the sacrifice worth the gain, I guess.
Yeah, like the sense of purpose, too, overall. Yeah, keeping that in mind.
Yeah. Did we define purpose exactly? I mean, you talked about fulfillment in the beginning, but how would you really see purpose?
I'd say purpose is having like a belief, something that gives meaning. So, in a very simple sense. So, yeah, keeping that in mind. But that is important, where people do feel like there's meaning to what they're doing or where they're at. I know, especially again back, in the career world now, that sense of social purpose or having, making the world a better place, that's very important. Yeah.
And I feel like everybody needs that profound why of like those big dreams, like I want to, or I know my one friend, I brought him up earlier, my friend James, he wants to be a meteorologist, and he actually has like a specific like grand goal that he has. He's like, I want to actually figure out a system to correctly predict snow, because every time is like, it was very interesting to me because it's like, you don't think about that. It's like, if it snows, it snows, but he wants to actively think of a reliable way to do that. And that's such a grandiose thing that might never happen, but it's that dream that you need. Although, reversely, I feel like it's bad when some people have this dream, but none of the more specific things. Because those are the people without the initiative, and they're just kind of like, I want to help people, I want to save the world. It's like, okay, buddy, but like, what are you actually doing? What are you actually doing?
Exactly. It takes both. It is. It's like having that dream and the vision and being able to make it happen, right?
Like the top-down processing versus the bottom-up.
Yeah. But I do love to hear that about like your friend, somebody who's got that big, that big dream or goal in mind.
I would say that's more of a specific thing, though. So maybe a bad example. A better one is like, I want to save the planet or something.
Yeah, like, that's like, what
are you
going to do about it? Right, exactly. Yeah, good.
It's like save it with pollution or like save the animals. Like that's such a, those two things are very different.
Yeah, so you heard me say, throughout, it's like being more specific and focused. That's what makes it,
right.
Yeah, that you can accomplish something.
Mm-hmm. With that said, I think this is probably a good stopping point. So I guess I'll ask you, what is the big takeaway here?
One takeaway I would like all of your listeners to walk away with is that we do have control over our lives, and we can make choices, and we truly can live the life that we are looking to live. So it's to take that initiative and really be specific on what you want to achieve and make it happen. Yeah,
well said. So I guess before we exactly end this off here, tell us about, like, I don't know, this is the plug session of the video. So
okay, sure. So so I have a small business, a consulting company called Atticus Consulting LLC. And so as we've discussed, I do coaching, both professional and executive coaching. Also, I do team development and a lot of training. So training on topics like dealing with change, strategy, a lot of HR training, and other topics like that.
Good. And I'll put the links in the description and everything like that.
Great.
So yeah, this has been our topic on careers, and thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys next time.